Hi! Before we start this week's episode of the After Movie Diner, we'd like to alert all people listening that a decision has been reached in the government that, due to the rising costs of elections and really the indifferent and usually pretty disappointing outcomes they tend to have, that this year the candidates in question will wrestle over a large greased-up ham. That is all. More as this story unfolds. Hello and welcome to a particularly impromptu after movie diner. And contrary to regular episodes, this week we are very, very pleased to welcome back something I didn't think would happen, but welcome back a finally returning guest to the diner. It's the previous Schlockmeister himself, Marc McDonald. Hello, sir. How are you? Nice. And why don't you just let the ladies and gentlemen, not that there are any ladies listening, but why don't
or gentlemen for that matter.
Why don't you let the listening several know what we just watched?
Today we watched Tomorrowland. It was tomorrow today. We were both right on that same
high
wavelength.
Five. Good.
That's very sad.
And we came out of the movie, and there was so much to kind of discuss, and I wanted to pick Mark's brain on everything that the movie covered, that I thought, let's do an impromptu diner episode. We're not going to eat anything, but we're just going to grab a couple of milkshakes and quickly talk about the film.
Which is the best way to spend time in a diner.
It is.
Just having a milkshake.
And talking about a movie.
Absolutely.
Right. So, also what we're trying to do with the new diner shows is, by way of letting people know that there are going to be spoilers, we either say should they watch it or should they not watch it up front before listening to the show.
Yes, that's right. I just listened to the episode where you explained this.
If it's a bad film, they can listen to the show because it doesn't matter if we spoil anything because we're not suggesting that they watch it.
Right.
If it's a good film, they may want to, they don't have to, but they may want to watch the film before we go into it because we will be spoiling it.
Wow, this is going to be a very difficult thing for this film.
Why?
Because I don't know that I would wholeheartedly recommend it to everybody, but I did enjoy it.
Right. I would recommend it. Hi,
hello.
Good sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would say as a brief disclaimer, if you are someone with patience and if you are someone who likes thoughtful and or meaning-filled sci-fi with a childish bent.
Yeah, that's probably a good caveat.
Think a rejected idea by Spielberg from 1985 kind of thing.
It's a little bit sunny,
right?
I would say.
But it's kind of like...
a little bit rose-colored.
It's kind of like Indiana Jones and the World of the Future, sort of.
Yeah, it's got aspects of that. Yeah, I don't know. I would say
Clooney is like the grumpy old Indiana.
Decent film.
Yes, I would suggest anyone with a sense of childish wonder.
Right. Which is particularly ironic for the two of us going to see this.
Because the last thing we had...
cynics on the planet went to see what might be the most optimistic movie of the year.
Well, I know that it's optimistic. It's hopeful.
All right.
It's not exactly optimistic because it still believes that quite currently
everything's going to hell.
Right. Another good thing, if you are a fan of Neil deGrasse Tyson, or Neil deGrasse Tyson, I don't know how you pronounce it. DeGrasse. Because there's also that Degrassi
Junior High
TV show, but they spell it with an I, so hence why Degrassi. Right. Anyway, Neil deGrasse Junior High Tyson. If you're a fan of what he's been saying for a long, long time, which is the reason why there's NASA and the reason why there's a space program is because it inspires hope. It's not about what are we going to find or what are we.
Hi, how are you?
Right. Hello.
Hi.
Ready?
Yeah, we're just going to get a couple of milkshakes, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to get a black and white.
Okay.
And I'm going to get a black and white.
Huh.
Okay.
We're two very original people.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Anything else? So yeah, it's all about the reason why the scientific and artistic exploration is important on the Earth is because it inspires future generations, and that's the way progress happens.
Yes.
And
that is Neil deGrasse Tyson's
MO
take
Yeah.
on NASA. And I don't think he's necessarily wrong.
No, he's not.
No.
It's just because he comes out of the generation in the 50s and the 60s where, you know...
Where they were inspired by the moon landing.
Right.
Basically.
Well, but also the fact that they had presidents who put a lot of stock in scientific exploration and stuff. I mean, yes,
well,
for
to
political
be fair,
other reasons.
it was for political reasons, but
right,
yeah.
right. But still, it had another.
Well,
purpose.
and I think there's a big generation of people who were inspired by the events of that time period.
Right.
They were young at that time, and they're adults now, and they were inspired by it.
Right.
And they've gone into science or other fields similar to that because of those events. So I think Neil deGrasse Tyson would count himself among those people.
Right.
Would be my guess.
Yeah, and it's in a weird way. I remember when the adverts for Enterprise came out, the TV show, and it said about Captain Archer, who Bakula plays in Enterprise. It said, "Meet."
Once you go Bakula, you never go back.
Bakula.
No, once you go Blackula, you never go Bakula. Whatever.
Anyway, that's
Bomb
a schlock
joke.
treatment
That's a
joke.
really old joke that I just screwed up. I'm sure Doug Fry will be thrilled with me.
He'll be chewing his knuckles in frustration. But no, in that commercial it said, "Meet Captain Kirk's childhood hero."
Right.
And that was always inspiring to me because everyone loves Kirk, so why wouldn't you want to meet the guy who inspired him?
And
The fact of the
everybody
matter
did
is
want to meet him
and
until
then
they
he became
saw
a-
the
yeah,
show,
and
and then
became
they're
a
like, wow, this sucks.
jumpsuited, tedious, idiot. Anyway,
No, right.
So, but that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That kind of...
Well, and I think Star Trek, to an extent, had a similar impact on people.
Yes, it did. Yeah, completely.
It's the same thing with good science fiction, also inspires people.
And what this movie has, and why it's also important that it's aimed at children. Because while, like, we can go in as our generation and go, oh, okay, I understand what it's saying, we're not too late to step up to the play, but like in 10 years we're too late to step up to the play. Like, it's not our generation that's necessarily going to be the innovators of tomorrow.
That's true.
It's going to be the generation that's below us. And we've spoken about this before. It's because people in the generation ahead of us are living longer and they're running all the companies.
Yep.
By the time we get around to running the companies, we'll be usurped.
We'll be too old.
Right.
And they're going to want to hire all the young millennials that are coming under the scene.
Right.
Yeah.
And
we're the lost generation, John.
yeah, we are.
That's what we are. Generation
I love the way
X.
you say that. We're a last generation, John.
The disaffected youth of yesterday.
Right.
Of
And
the
maybe,
80s.
you see, maybe I'm being a bit of a cop-out by saying we can't affect you. Maybe it should be.
I think we
us.
can, to an extent. I don't know.
Right. But anyway, so, and maybe some of our generation already are,
It's never too late.
and we, on the other hand, are sitting in a
thank
diner drinking thank you very much, highly sugared and fatty drinks and talking about a movie made by a much more intelligent man. So I don't know that you and I can
Wow,
affect
this is
change.
taking a downward turn rapidly.
It is. Oh, but we are artistically
That's what we
inspiring.
get for watching an inspiring movie.
We are artistically
Only we
inspiring.
could come out of an inspiring movie and say, oh my god, we suck.
On milkshakes. So that's the idea. Anyway, so if that entertains you, also it's made by Brad Bird, who made The Incredibles and some of Pixar's sort of best stuff.
Yeah, I don't know what he did other than The Incredibles.
He did something else as well, I think.
Okay.
But he's done like...
But I love The Incredibles. It's probably my favorite Pixar film.
Right. So he did that, and he also did Mission Impossible 4.
Which I haven't seen. So I can't speak to.
But this played very much like... If it was animated, you wouldn't have noticed. The performances were great, but if it was animated, you wouldn't have noticed. To me, it played like an animated movie.
It actually did.
It really played like an
Yeah.
animated movie.
Yeah, that's a good observation. I'd say.
And you could imagine the character, for example, that Hugh Laurie played, being animated and then voiced by Hugh Laurie.
Yep.
You like, that's what I mean by that.
Yeah.
And you can imagine Clooney voicing
It's
the
a very
character he played.
Disney film. It's a Disney-fied film.
But I think
Disney.
harked back, though. I think it harked back. I think it had a 50s...
It definitely did. It was trying to do the... Well, I mean, it's at the beginning of the movie is set in the World's Fair in 1950. So
right. I think that it had...
trying to grasp that past future.
Right. Well, it felt like a movie from the 80s, because movie from the 80s had that 50s and 60s nostalgia with a, dash of sort of 80s lunacy, and with one eye on the future. And this movie definitely had that.
Back to the Future, basically.
Right, Back to the Future, Indiana Jones, all those kind of movies, Batteries Not Included, Cocoon, well, whatever it is, all that kind of stuff. We interrupt this podcast to bring you an interesting tidbit. I just found out that Brad Bird wrote Batteries Not Included. It's kind of what I would say is harmless family filmmaking, but I would say in the best possible way, not in the worst possible way. Because there's condescending family filmmaking, and then there's this.
Yes.
And while J.J. Abrams with something like Super 8 and other movies has been, was meant to be the guy to follow on Spielberg's coattails, this felt to me much more like something Spielberg would have made in his prime versus anything that J.J. Abrams has done.
I could agree with that. Yeah, I could grant you that.
Also, what did this have? Oh, yeah, it had a plot, a point, and characters. Something else that J.J. Abrams finds difficult.
I feel like this is the antithesis of all the movies that were in the previews for it.
Yes, no, all the previews for
all the
this
movies
movie.
in the previews were the kind of awful tripe that is cynical and a money grab and geared toward pop culture mythology and has nothing to say other than, go see this movie and be like a pop star in the next Gem feature. What a piece of shit.
Yeah.
But don't get me started. Sorry, I don't mean to take this to a negative place.
So why don't you invigorate us and give us the plot of the movie to the best of your ability?
The plot of the movie is the best of my ability. Well, it's a little disjointed. It's sort of about the main character, the girl, Casey was her name?
Casey, who is the daughter of a NASA engineer.
Yes.
And she's very upset that they are taking down Cape Canaveral once and for all.
Right. For a specific platform. I don't know if they're completely deconstructing Cape Canaveral, but they're taking down some platform.
The launching platform.
Yeah, well, one of them.
Right.
I guess this was talking about the whole space shuttle program.
Yeah, they decommissioned the space shuttle program.
Right.
Which, again, Neil deGrasse Tyson was completely against. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that was the jumping off point for the story.
Yeah, and basically she's upset about this, number one, because her dad's losing a job. Number two, because she's very optimistic about the future.
Well, as a child, she always wanted to go to the stars.
Yes, right. And it's a little disjointed in the start, but basically it's about her, and it's partly also from the point of view of George Clooney's character, who starts out as a young boy in the 50s, going to the World's Fair and showing off his invention, which is basically a Rocketeer rocket pack.
Right. To Hugh Laurie.
Harking to another Disney property.
Yeah. Oh, there were so many harkings to other Disney properties.
Oh, all over the place.
When they went into the geek shop and it was filled with Star Wars stuff.
Yeah,
and
They had no problem.
Which is fine. I have no problem with that. They also went on the It's a Small World ride and...
Yeah, which was at the World's Fair. Is that a thing that actually happened? Was the It's a Small World ride at the World's Fair?
I would imagine so. Isn't that where it came from?
I don't know. Is it?
The whole theory that it's a small world, we're all in it together, that kind of thing.
Oh, okay. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know the history of the It's a Small World ride. I only know that it's at Disney World.
It's now at Disney World, but it seems plausible to me, yeah. Interrupting this podcast again, for another interesting tidbit. It's a Small World was built for the World's Fair, but it was built for the 1964 World's Fair, so maybe that's what this was in the movie, and we just interpreted 50s. Okay, back to the show.
Okay.
I wonder if Captain America was also there. Because isn't that at the beginning of the Captain America movie, he's at the World's Fair?
Is he?
Yeah, Steve Rogers is at the World's Fair with Binky or whatever his name is.
Skinny Steve Rogers?
Yeah, Skinny Steve Rogers.
Skinny, scrawny Steve Rogers is there.
With Binky or whatever his name. What's his name? Bucky.
Bucky.
Trying to pick up chicks.
Really?
Yeah.
How do you remember this? I don't remember
That's
this
right
at
at the
all.
beginning of Captain America 1.
I don't remember
Which was directed by the guy who directed The Rocketeer, so it all ties in together.
The incestuous world of modern cinema.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he goes there and he has an invention that he wants to show off, which there's a young girl who is very interested in.
Athena.
Athena, the strangest name for a young girl I've ever heard.
Right.
Apologies to all the Athenas out there, all three of you.
Who are listening to this podcast. I have a
No
big
doubt.
Athena
All
contingent.
three Athenas in the world.
Listen to the After Movie Diner.
Yeah.
Because they think it's the Athena Movie Diner.
Oh, that's weak.
Yeah, I know. Oh, well. To Hugh Laurie. Hugh Laurie
Anyway, and
poo-poos it.
Hugh Laurie poo-poos his invention because it doesn't quite work. It almost works.
Right.
Athena thinks it's amazing and has a great deal of potential.
Well, she we find out that
illegally
she is
recruits him.
able to spot dreamers. Let's
Yes.
just put it that way. We
Right.
won't reveal it, but
Right. I mean, I guess we can reveal it.
Yeah, well, we've
We
told people that they
said
should
there's
say,
going to
yeah.
be spoilers. So. Yeah, she's basically works for this Tomorrowland area.
place. It's
Place.
another dimension.
It is another dimension. That's full of all the world's greatest scientists.
Scientists, artists, dreamers, creatives, all the people unencumbered by politics and religion and everything,
Politics.
go to
and
another dimension and build all the crazy crap
money.
you'd ever want.
Unencumbered by money, I believe, also was one of the messages.
Right. Although how they built all this stuff without money.
No idea.
For the love of it.
I mean, they do it in Star Trek.
Right.
There's no money in the future.
Right.
People just do things because they can do it.
Right.
And they're not like, oh, you have to pay someone to mine all of this crazy shit that you're going to use to build a fantastic transporter device.
Yeah, let's gloss over the fact that they've built basically an entire city. I won't say world because there's
No, it's more of a city, yeah.
It's a city of the future.
Yep.
And they've done it, I presume, just with all these engineers. Although, again, it's a bit like the Kevin Smith Death Star thing. They must have had contractors on this crap. Like, do you know what I mean? They
I don't
must
know.
have had.
Like, all the dreamers in the world, they're not going to get their hands dirty actually building
Yeah,
something.
dreamers sit around and like think big and talk
They're
big.
like, wouldn't it be cool if we had a building that could fly in the future?
That's how dreamers talk in your head?
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be fun?
Wouldn't it be great?
What if I had like a rocket pad?
I'm a dreamer. I'm dreaming things. I don't actually build stuff.
What if I made a milkshake that hovered in midair and constantly refilled itself?
Yeah, where are all the mass producers in this future?
I don't know.
That's why they have robots. Construction, they do all the menial
Robots,
construction
right? And that was another thing that like smacked of Brad Bird's animation past, with these very sort of,
the big
cartoony looking
bubbly,
robots.
cartoony
Well, I guess
robots,
that's
yeah.
who built it. So they had
Yeah.
one engineer who like built a bunch of robots, and then those robots put up the buildings. I guess.
Clearly, they don't expect anybody to think it through this much.
Right.
Because it's a very glossy, sort of
Oh yeah, it's a Disney future. Yeah.
overly, I would almost say, optimistic view of how things should be.
Right.
It's very 1950s, like, whoa, we all have flying cars and blah, blah, blah. And
But we also find out
forget
that,
how we do it. That's
Right.
not important. It's just that we'll do it.
but that's also the message of the movie, so they can kind of get away from it, or
Yeah.
get away with it rather.
Yeah, right.
Because there's that bit at the beginning where Hugh Laurie says, well, why would we even have a jetpack? And the dude says, well, for fun. And he's like, come on, you can do better than for fun. And he said, well, imagine if you're walking along the road and some kid whizzed overhead of you with a jetpack. Wouldn't that inspire you to, like, build your own jetpack or inspire you to do
guess.
other stuff?
I mean, it might.
I'd probably just go, God, that noisy arsehole with a jetpack.
It's like, I'm sure they thought that when they first saw a leaf blower, too, but now everybody hates them.
See, you and I will never be part of the future because the moment the future is created, we go, oh, what is that noisy thing? Get rid of it.
Oh, God, it's just a bunch of young 20-something douchebag dude bros flying around in jetpacks.
Right, like the hoverboard.
Which it was.
Everyone wants a hoverboard, but like all the people,
the people who
use
actually
it in
use
the
it are
movies, you
jerks.
just want to smack them in.
Well, and that's what the kid was totally not seeing. He's like, well, wouldn't you be inspired? I'm like, well, I might be inspired if there was only one jetpack in the world and I'd never seen one before. I'd be like, wow. But as soon as everyone has one, now I'm not inspired anymore. Everybody has one.
To jump forward, Athena sneaks young George Clooney into Tomorrowland.
Right.
While he's there, a robot helps fix his antiquated
Jetpack.
1950s jetpack. He whizzes
Made
about.
out of an Electrolux vacuum cleaner.
Right. He whizzes about the place, and cut to a few years later in Tomorrowland, and they've built like a new high-tech futuristic jetpack off his design.
Right.
Imagines.
Yeah.
And we see, like you say, 3 completely annoyingly pretty dude bro surfer types get off these jetpacks and be like, yeah, we've been jetpacking in high school.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh.
It's like, oh, bro, I can't believe you fucking bit it.
Yeah, look at you
On the
with the
jetpack.
Oh my god.
Oh my god, that was the worst willy or
And I
don't know, whatever.
And I think I leant over and I went, this future world would be filled with assholes. I was like,
filled with assholes who are dressed in the dumbest looking outfits you've ever seen.
because the other thing was they had all these like mad swimming pools that were sort of in midair, and people were doing somersaults in between swimming pools, like up and down and through them and all the rest of it. And I was just like, God, that looks tiring. I just like I was sat there and I was like, where's the dude sat in his pants watching a big TV?
Yeah.
Because I don't know about you.
Those guys aren't in Tomorrowland. They were all left here.
But also the idea is that
to die.
The idea is that every single creative person is just always sat around going, yeah, ideas, creation, which isn't the case at all.
I love your jazz hands version of the creative person.
Because I mean, I'm creative, but like I sit around in my pants a lot watching Netflix, and then occasionally go, bing, idea, and then I do stuff. You know what I mean? Though you don't.
Yeah.
You don't.
Yeah, you're not on 24 hours a day.
So where were these people? Like, where were the big fat creative types just sitting around?
Oh, that's the other thing, is that creative people don't get fat.
Right.
They're all like amazing looking people with futuristic pantsuits.
Right.
And
I quite liked the kind of Logan's Run version of the future where they're all slinking around in velveteen tracksuits. I quite like that idea.
and looking ridiculous.
I quite like the design of the world. It looked a bit like the Guardians of the Galaxy
Good. It was a
planet.
little. I felt like it was a little old-fashioned, but I think they were going for that.
Yeah, they were going
trying to
for
go with,
what would Disney build in the year 2020.
Right. It was past future.
I love that I'm saying 2020 like 2020 is so far in the future, and it's like 5 years.
5 years from now.
It's because I'm still
It's like we still haven't accomplished really much of anything.
No.
That's not true. We've got phones.
Basically, we found a way to make ourselves more inward and detached. That's what we figured out.
As we sit here communicating to hundreds of people using the phone technology that you're now making fun of. Way to go, John.
While you wear whatever that futuristic wrist device is.
It's a Fitbit.
It's a Fitbit. But clearly designed by someone who'd seen either Star Trek or Star Wars or Logan's Run. Or
people of our parents' generation.
Like, yeah, we're going to make it slick and have a little light on it and beep. I bet when you turn 4, I was going to say when you turn 30 it beeps on your hand. But you've already
That's
turned
the case.
30.
There's no risk of it beeping anytime.
No, right. Maybe when you turn 50 it'll start to beep and then your hand will detonate or something. So,
and then we'll have to go participate in Carousel. Speaking of Logan's Run.
So anyway, Athena tries to recruit, or does recruit, in the future where it's clear that, like...
Athena's a robot girl who recruited George Clooney's character.
Recruited George Clooney's
young George
character.
Clooney.
we then see her in the future in 2015, I presume, or thereabouts, 2013, 14, whatever.
Right.
Recruiting Casey, the young girl. And this was the whole section of the movie. Like, the first act of the movie was very, very long. It felt. In other words, there was a whole ton of establishment, which I don't know that there was necessarily needed to be. I think if with a bit more judicial... Because I had to wait...
I wasn't as bored as you were.
I wasn't bored, I was anxious. Because the first act to me felt like a prequel for a movie I hadn't seen yet. And I was like, can we get to the MacGuffin? Because there's going to be a MacGuffin, and there's going to be something they're going to have to do where they throw the ring into Mount Doom.
Can we get to the plot?
Can we get to the plot? And it took a long, long time. And even at the end of it, once everything had been wrapped up, I still don't think the opening was that
There was a
long.
lot of starting the story and then restarting the story.
Right. Like...
It was like... I think it was because they had to tell his background.
Right.
And they had to tell her background.
Right.
And they had to get a lot of information into the first part of the film.
But that whole
wasn't
bit where she
really...
went to Texas...
Yeah.
Right, in a day from Florida.
Right, that was one of the things that we noticed too. They drive literally across the entire United States.
Yeah, it's probably
like
3 or 4 days
10
drive
minutes.
from Cape Canaveral to Texas.
And meanwhile, she drives the whole way and takes a short nap.
Yeah. She also drives from Texas to New York.
Yeah.
In a similar overnight fashion.
She took a bus to Texas, which a bus ride to Texas would take a year.
And it would be
because it
3 or
stops
4
in every
buses.
city.
It would be 3 or 4 buses. There probably isn't one direct.
And they left out the part where, like, a gross, smelly man tried
to molest her.
dismember her in her sleep.
Yeah, right. Because you're still driving on Greyhounds in 1993.
Yeah.
Rather than Greyhounds now, which I believe are quite pleasurable experience.
Are they?
I don't think big,
I wouldn't
fat,
know. I
sweaty
gave
men
up
are
on
still,
buses
like,
a long time ago.
trying to slice you up, put you in a duffel bag, and leave you by a gas station. I don't think that's happening anymore.
All right. I mean, that is the last time I took a bus.
That's what happened to you?
It didn't happen to me, but it happened the same day that I was traveling on a bus. That's when the guy decapitated the guy in the bus in...
What the hell?
Remember this?
Well, I
it was
wasn't living
huge
here.
news.
I wasn't living there then.
No, you were. It was like 2004.
Oh, this happened really recently. I wasn't living here in
not that.
2004.
It's not. It's like 10 years ago now.
Yeah, I wasn't living here 10
Oh, you weren't?
No.
Oh.
I moved here in December 07.
I believe this was upstate somewhere.
Okay. I won't travel there by Greyhound.
No, or it was like Toronto area or something. I can't remember.
Okay.
But
anyway,
a
there's a
person
lot
went
of...
insane and cut someone's head off on the back of a bus.
Nice. Well, that happened.
Yeah.
So the spatial awareness in this movie and the traveling took huge leaps and times or whatever. But that whole
Why don't you want to
sequence-
talk about decapitation, John?
No, but the whole sequence in
I'm kidding.
Texas, the only thing it established was that there were evil robot forces.
Yeah, it was very strange that they made her go all the way to Texas.
Right.
I don't
well,
know
not only
what the
that,
point
but
of
like
that was.
none of that was necessary. You could have literally had Athena, right, dropped off at George Clooney's house
Yeah, they
and
could
had
have
those
skipped all
robots
that, yep.
attack. You didn't need to establish robots because it was established once.
Yep.
Well,
She
first
didn't
of all,
have to go to that.
You'd established
pawn shop.
Athena was a robot, right? So you establish that. That establishes that in this world there are robots.
Yep.
And then when all the evil robots show up at Clooney's, it takes one line of dialogue of him looking out the window going, "Uh-oh, evil robots." And then,
Which is something he said anyway.
right.
So they could have. They
That's what
didn't
I'm
even
saying,
have to
that entire
reshoot
section,
anything.
get
They
rid of
could have just cut that portion out. And
I mean, I
nobody
know
would
that
have
you
known.
got those cameos from Catherine Hahn and whatever one of Key and Peele. Just Key and Peele. It was one of them.
Yeah. Who had a really weird prosthetic gut that he was wearing that was very distracting.
Really?
Yeah. I didn't get why. They're like, this guy has to have a gut because he runs a pawn shop? I don't know. Or,
Well, he ran a retro.
Or not a
it
pawn
was
shop.
like a retro
Yeah.
nerd geek science fiction
Right.
shop called Blast from the Past.
right.
Which
It was
can-
basically the shop from Back to the Future, too.
Right.
With all the stuff from the past.
Right. And also a bit of the shop from the movie Paul, and it even looked a bit like
I haven't
it.
seen the movie, Paul.
It's not very good, don't bother. So, anyway,
But anyway,
that
so
whole
they-
sequence
that whole
I could have taken out.
Yeah, I agree.
I really don't think that was relevant. And I also think that you didn't need to see her go to Cape Canaveral twice have her get arrested, blah 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 blah. Like all that was.
Yeah, I mean,
irrelevant.
it kind of established her as willing to shake things up and
Which
go outside of the.
You only have to have her do it once,
right.
almost get away with it.
She didn't have to go with it. She didn't have to go the second time and get arrested. You're right.
Right.
That wasn't necessary.
I'm just saying that in terms of plotting, the stuff. What I mean
Also,
is,
that made it even less plausible because how did the robot Athena, the robot girl, get into prison to the place where they keep, like the hyper secure area where
she didn't. She put it into her helmet earlier on. We saw her putting it into her helmet.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And then
No, she didn't put it in then. She just scanned. She just took hair from her helmet and scanned her DNA.
But I think
right?
she must have put it into one of.
Oh, was she maybe
something.
like coding the thing to her so it would only work for her?
Yes.
That's what the DNA scan
She was
thing
coding the badge to her, but then she also put the badge somewhere
All right.
so that it was then found by the police, but not found by her.
Right.
So when she was arrested, the police go through everything. They go through your pockets and everything, right?
Why didn't they give her helmet? Why didn't they have her helmet?
They did. They said the bike's around the back or something like that.
okay.
The helmet was probably there. Anyway.
All right, fine. You win this round, Tomorrowland.
Jeff, Tomorrowland. You win this battle, Jeff, Tomorrowland. I just found that like Act 1 and parts of Act 2 a little.
It was over padded, I felt.
But once
I
Clooney
could
got
agree
on the
with that.
picture,
It wasn't awful. It was a little long.
it just dragged.
Yeah.
The pacing was a little
Yeah.
off. And it's a long movie anyway. I mean, it's a 2-hour.
Yeah, which I was surprised at. I didn't think it was going to be that long. I thought it's a half-hour concept, I would say, or hour and a half concept.
Right. And I also think that it's a bit odd because if your whole point was to make it family and kid accessible, which clearly it was.
Yeah. Like, kids must have huge bladders these days.
Well, not only bladders, but also attention.
Yeah.
What's the word?
Spans.
Attention.
Also attention anyway.
Shiny object. So,
Yeah, I mean, yeah. The first act could have been done with some trimming.
Like the older characters, it looked like they were.
you
But
put
anyway,
you put the scene with her dad and the apple towards the beginning. Then you have her go to Cape
I
Canaveral.
do feel like it's really preachy in the beginning too. It's very.
No,
I felt
thought,
it was
I thought
very
it got
heavy.
preachy by the time Hugh Laurie was actually preaching at the end
Yeah,
of the
I
movie.
mean everything got preachy to an extent. Like they were very heavy-handed with their metaphor.
I
Like,
wasn't against that, though.
I'm not against the general conceit of the film. I am a little against like optimism is wonderful and the problem with the world is that people don't believe and click your heels and everything will get better and it's
yeah, it
just
definitely
like,
had a Wizard of Oz
it was a
feel.
very like
It definitely had a Wizard of Oz feel.
but it was
to
very heavy-handed. Like literally like she goes to school and every class she's in school they're all saying the world's doomed, everything's awful.
Right.
Blah blah, death, doom, destruction, and she's trying to ask questions, and
Right.
they won't
But
let
I
her.
wasn't against. Some movies I'm against being, and in fact, we recently talked about It Follows on the show, which was about. It was a horror movie conceit that was entirely slavish to its metaphor rather than trying to tell an actual unique story.
Right.
Whereas I thought this had enough invention, creativity, and ideas in it,
The story itself is decent.
and told a decent enough story
Right.
that the heavy-handed metaphor stuff was still acceptable
Right.
to me.
Well,
Like by the
okay.
time you've got George Clooney,
I mean, the metaphor itself is acceptable. I feel like it was too heavy-handed. It could have been more subtle.
but by the time you got to George Clooney's house and you had all the like mad inventions and the Doc Brown stuff,
Yeah,
and the,
I'm
all
fine
that,
with all
I
that.
love all that.
Yeah,
stuff.
that's great.
And he's sort of like an old curmudgeonly Indiana Jones type,
Yeah.
with his like.
And he's
run
also
full
got
of
like a sort of
inventions and
he's got sort of a rough handmade style of
Yes.
everything.
Yeah.
Where everything's very like I don't know, corrugated iron looking.
right. Oh no,
And,
that's what I mean. It's
yeah.
like proper. It looks like something out of Temple of Doom or something. Like it's got that
or
kind
it looks
of
like something
set
out of like
dressing
the
and-
Explorers. Like
Right,
it's
or
all
Goonies or
home,
something,
right.
like-
It's very homemadey but
Yeah.
cool. Everything is amazing. But
again, that's an animation sensibility.
Yes.
Like all that detail.
Yes.
If you look at something like, funny enough, we saw the Shaun the Sheep movie from Aardman Animation trailer beforehand, and if you think back to like Wallace and Gromit,
Nobody knows what Shaun the Sheep is.
it's by Aardman
Except for your
Animation
British listeners.
who did Wallace and Gromit.
Okay.
And in Wallace and Gromit, there's that whole idea
Yes.
that he's an inventor and blah blah blah
A
blah
tinkerer.
blah. Like animators love
Yes.
that idea because
inventor
there's stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's inventors as tinkerers rather than the Iron Man version of inventors.
Right.
Where like a super high tech
And everything they do is
where
brilliant.
everything
Right,
is
right,
put
right.
together on a computer
Right.
with holograms, and then a machine just builds it for them. This is much more tinkery,
Right.
workbenchy.
And her dad was
sensibility.
that.
Her dad was that
She
also.
was that.
Yep.
Clooney was that. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And we're meant to believe that Tomorrowland is a world put together by people.
by
like
people like that,
which is why I didn't buy it being so shiny. It could have been more steampunk for my liking.
Yeah,
Although I don't like
I'm
particularly
not crazy
that
about
trend.
steampunk,
But like a futuristic kind of form of...
But there's a point in the film where they
It does get
Go to
steampunky,
the
which I
Eiffel
really, really
Tower.
liked. That's where, for me, I was like, right, this movie's got me. I love it. It's awesome.
Yeah,
They're up the
yeah.
Eiffel Tower.
that
they
was
go.
that was a cool idea.
They go. The Eiffel Tower's really an antenna, and I'm like, I totally buy that. That's an awesome.
Well, of course it's an
conspiracy
antenna.
theory.
That's what it really is.
Right.
It really is an antenna.
Right. But it also looked like
But it also happens to be a rocket launcher in this
Right.
movie. So
in this movie, but also the fact that it was like the RKO logo. Like there's
Yep.
so much stuff about it that was very, very cool.
yeah,
And then when it broke apart and became a rocket launcher thing, you were like, that's totally what rocket launcher things look like as well.
yeah,
So that
Yeah.
was awesome.
Yeah.
And then they got into like this like whirry cog based steampunk
Yes.
rocket, which I was like, I'm digging that.
I also really liked. They did a good job with the robot part of Athena.
right.
They did a cool thing where she would occasionally tweak out and there'd be something wrong and her eyelids would blink
Right.
out of sync.
Yeah.
And it was very subtle and simple, but it
Right.
worked.
Really worked.
Yeah. And it would have like cool, like, I don't know, servo-y noises when it was doing it. And,
Yeah.
and it worked. It was very subtle and simple and worked, and I was like, that was good.
Yeah.
They didn't feel the need to like have her remove her arm or something. And,
No.
you know. Although
No,
they
she
did
had
have a
a
part
little
where she had a
hole.
little hole in her stomach.
Well, she had a like Crichton has. She had like a little storage drawer in her stomach,
Which, okay, that was probably...
which I would have preferred her lifting up her shirt to have like an actual like little old clunky drawer rather than some digitized thing.
Yeah,
I would have
some
preferred it to be
yeah.
some sort of
That was-
like a belly button unscrewed and it came out. That would have been awesome.
Yeah.
So they missed a trick there, but I liked the little hole she had in her neck with the blue like wires sticking out.
Oh, that
of
was
it.
cool. And when she was having the problem with her translator.
And I like the fact that she had like a little screwdriver thing. It wasn't some big digital thing. It was just like a little screwdriver.
There was some
that she
good
used.
comedy in it, I felt.
Yes.
So, I mean, subtle, not trying too hard, I didn't
I really
think.
liked Clooney as a sort of curmudgeonly anti-hero. I thought
Yeah.
he was very cool. I mean, I can watch him do anything.
Yeah,
but,
I was going to say, surprised Clooney was good in something. But
Right. But he
He's
was
just
he was
generally
summoning his inner Harrison Ford. I felt like had this been Harrison Ford in like indie
True.
or age,
Yes.
that would have
Yep.
been fine too.
Yep. He definitely pulls off that
Right.
that sensibility.
I buy him as an engineer about as much as I buy Harrison Ford as an archaeologist.
Well, that's true. But as a cranky old guy who's telling people just fuck off
Right.
when they're knocking on his door, it works.
Yeah, I liked I thought they missed one trick when the boy Clooney was first got in the.
He was a little starry-eyed, that kid.
He was.
I
but
found
mean,
him a little annoying, but
right.
it had a sort of Anakin Skywalker thing going on.
He
but
wasn't that
He
bad.
wasn't that
He
bad.
wasn't
He
Jake
wasn't.
Lloyd
No,
bad.
he wasn't that bad. You're right.
He was a pretty decent.
You're
He
right.
just had a bit of a
There
cherub
was a little
face.
bit in the beginning where it was him and Athena, and they're both a little too perfect looking.
Well, perfect speaking and perfect.
Right.
They're a bit like
They're-
RADA trained kids.
Yeah. They're very
But they had a lot of-
Disney children,
Except,
you know, like
but they had a
perfect
lot of
teeth
dialogue to. They had a lot of screen time and a lot of dialogue, and you couldn't have hired some slightly quirky kid who wasn't an actor. Like, you had to hire.
Oh no, I mean it's
stage
fine.
kid.
It's fine that he was an actor. I
types.
just felt he was very porcelain doll, and then she was very porcelain doll. I mean, of course, she was a robot, so that's explained by that. Although at the beginning you don't know that, so you see the two of them, and you're like, "What the?" The first 10 minutes, I was dragged kicking and screaming through because it was just painfully, cloyingly sweet and Disney-ish to me. But then I got
Hugh Laurie took some of the edge off.
Yes, Hugh Laurie definitely. Yeah. Oh God, he saved that first 10 minutes. But then he gets weirdly cartoonishly villainous toward the end, almost.
Yeah, no, and
And I
that's what I
kind
mean.
of wish that he had been saved at the end instead of him dying.
Right. Well, that's what I mean. Is I think
Although he had the line of the movie when he died, but
he had a line in the movie which they only get away with because he's English. If
Yeah.
it was,
If it was
there's
anybody-
no way you could say the American equivalent. It's
Right.
because it's an English slang word and nobody really knows it. They
yeah,
like sluck it
they
under
could
the.
totally slide it in.
Yeah, it's
which
like
was great.
It's like in Buffy they could say wanker. I mean, they have no idea how. Like wanker in England is fairly offensive, but like in
Yeah.
a Buffy show in America, no.
It's like in America, you never like they. Well,
You could say
I mean,
jerk off because
you could
jerk
call
off
someone a
doesn't have,
jerk off.
but it doesn't have the same connotation. Wanker is far more like, shithead or something or dickhead or something.
Oh, it's a harsher.
Yeah, if you're a
Swear
wanker,
word?
yeah, it's a much
Calling
harsher
someone a
swear
wanker.
word
It
than a
doesn't
jerk.
just mean you. No, a jerk off
Right. A jerk off, like
or a
calling-
jack off.
Yeah, calling someone a jerk is nothing.
Jerk is different though. That's different than calling someone a jerk off.
Is it?
Yeah.
Do they carry different weight?
I don't know about different weight, but they mean different things.
Considering you can say ass on The Simpsons.
It's like calling someone a jag off is another thing.
Right, but that's from Pennsylvania, specifically.
I don't know how it could be
Pittsburgh
when it's something that we said when we were kids and I didn't live in Pennsylvania.
Oh, really? I thought that was a Pittsburgh thing specific.
Not that I'm aware of.
Oh, fair enough. Okay.
I don't know. I mean, we said Wicked when I was a kid too, and supposedly that's a Boston-only thing, so what do I know?
Fair enough. Anyway.
Anyway,
No, he said bollocks. when
he's
he died.
good.
But
I
no-
like him better in the first half of the film than the latter half of the film.
But that's
and
what I'm
he
saying.
is
If
a
he
little
was-
too curmudgeonly, but
If
but
he
it's
was,
a Disney movie.
If he was like a cartoon praying mantis in a suit, do you know what I mean? Like his
Yeah, right. If this-
speechifying
it's
would have
very
been
cartoony
absolutely
film.
fine.
Yeah, you're right.
Do you know what I mean? If he'd been I'm trying to think, like a parakeet in a top
Parakeet
hat or
doesn't work.
something. No, what would be a villainous
A good
animal? Like an
villain,
evil weasel
he'd
or
need-
something.
Yeah, he'd have to be a weasel.
If he was a
or,
weasel or a dinosaur or something.
but something
or
that's clever but not nice,
right.
like a raven
Or a bat or something. I'm just saying, like, if this was an anthropomorphic animal
Yeah, right.
animation,
Actually, grasshopper I think works.
yeah, that's what I meant. Like a praying mantis,
it looks
grasshopper.
erudite, but
right.
it's still insectoid and vaguely evil.
Right. Yes,
Right.
that's what I was going. Yeah.
Right.
Or a cockroach or something. So I mean, then his speechifying would be fine. Hi. We interrupt this podcast to say, hi, I'm interrupting this podcast because I'm looking for your help. Next year, we want to send the diner out on tour and start to meet a lot of the people who have been previous guests or vocal supporters of the diner for the last few years, and hopefully do shows with them in their own local diners around all of North America. Very exciting stuff. Also, we want to continue being able to release a free podcast every week from now on. Obviously, this is all very pricey with website costs, movie costs, eating costs, and traveling costs. It can all add up. So we're asking everyone who listens and loves the After Movie Diner to rush to patreon.com/Aftermovie Diner. That's www.patreon, which is patreon.com/After Movie Diner, and become a sponsor or a patron of the After Movie Diner for as low as just $1 a show or 70p if you're in the UK. Either that, or for a one-time donation, click the donate button on aftermoviediner.com. If you're strapped for cash, and we certainly appreciate that predicament, please don't forget to subscribe, rate, review, and share the After Movie Diner as frequently and across as many social media networks as possible. Every little helps, I can assure you. Want to be part of the show? Then just write to us at aftermoviediner@gmail.com or call us on 347-669-0053. Thanks for listening, and now back to the show. Actually, by the time that point in the movie came along, it was so, like, bowling along, I really didn't mind.
Right.
But
it's true.
That's what I mean about
Although
the
his
pacing.
costume was
It
also
was
adorable.
very like the second hour felt much quicker than the first hour. The first hour felt like 2 hours, and the second hour felt like half an hour.
I could agree with that.
It just bowled up. Once Clooney was on board, it just kind of bowled along. Like, I was just like, okay, great, I'm following Clooney, and we're getting into machines, and things are whizzing off. And
the first 40 minutes is slow as all get out.
Yeah.
Then once she gets to Clooney's house, it takes off.
Yeah, because you have an action sequence, then they run to, Actually,
I'd say once she gets to the pawn shop, it pretty well takes off. There's a decent action sequence there, and then there's a good random moment with her getting hit by the car.
I would just totally redo that whole first.
Right, I'm saying I agree that you could pull that part out, but I think by the time that started happening, I was like, all right, something's going on now.
Right. So they drag her to Tomorrowland because when she was in Clooney's Death of the World prediction room.
That's right. So Clooney,
when he was living in
Tomorrowland as one of the geniuses, he built a device that could see the future
or the past.
Using tachyon particles.
Yeah.
And which are particles that can travel faster than the speed of light, although actually the science on that is not very good, but we'll let that slide.
Right.
That was actually a false news story, but turns out they can't travel faster than the speed of light.
Right.
They just appear to travel. But anyway, that's beside the point.
Right. Hello! It's at this point in the podcast that Marc McDonald would like me to read the following disclaimer. I already fact-checked my blowhard blathering about tachyons, and I was mixing them up with neutrinos. Tachyons are theoretical particles and do move faster than light, hypothetically speaking. Neutrinos were in the news recently because of an anomaly where they appeared to be moving faster than light, but it was an error, so I screwed that up. Well, thank you ever so much, Mark, for letting us know that, and I'm sure everyone listening to this podcast cares deeply about tachyons, neutrinos, or even knows what they are. I'm sure they're all words that they use all the time. This was all about believing. This was all about one day.
I will suspend my disbelief and say tachyons are particles that somehow let them see the future.
So Clooney's figured out that in 58 days the world ends. Mm-hmm. We let off atom bombs, buildings fall down, there's
58 days from the point in which the movie takes place.
Right.
But he supposedly built this device much earlier than that.
And he has a clock that's counting down.
Yeah.
And
it's got a clock that has the probability
of 100%.
Yeah, so 100%.
But when she meets it, and
she's looking at it, and she says, at one point, she says something like,
she says, can't we change it?
Can't we do anything to fix it?
Right.
And at that moment,
which has been her question since the beginning. She asked the same question.
She asked the same thing in class, yep.
Yeah.
And at that moment, the percentage on the clock, drops down to 99.8 or something like that.
Yeah, it flickers. Yeah. There's a flicker. There's an anomaly.
Right, there's a flicker.
And Clooney's like, wait a minute, in 50 years we've never seen anything like this.
Yeah, and he immediately pisses his pants, and then robots show up and start trying to kill them.
So then he has this cool escape my house, I'm a big inventor plan, which was totally ludicrous, but also awesome.
Totally over-the-top ridiculous.
But very inventory and very Doc Brownie and very...
which is why it worked.
Right.
Very,
completely.
Yeah.
I love I love that he had those big metal shutters, and then there was a robot trying to get in, and they didn't quite shut down.
It was very Rube Goldberg,
oh yeah, completely.
Shoot me out of my house in a pod to a pond,
right,
a mile away,
where I've got a 1960s motorbike, like a Triumph motorbike, stashed next to a thing. Once that all happened, I was totally on board. I was like, this fucking kicks ass.
Yeah. And that was actually a great sequence with all the robots breaking into the house and the various ways that they kill all the robots that are trying to kill them.
Because there was unbelievable takedowns of the robots, but there was also still tension because you figured that these inventions would be finite and they would run out of...
Right.
There was 3 or 4 times where he's like, oh, that's very fortuitous. But then there was a few times where you're like, uh-oh, how are they going to get out of it?
Yeah, he sold it
That kept the tension.
Yeah. And I think that was Clooney that pulled that off.
Yeah, totally, and that's Clooney. Yeah.
Because he made it convincing that he was nervous.
Right. Yeah, and I like the way he stashed
He
his
was
photographs.
prepared
and put
but
them-
worried.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was funny.
Well, no, because clearly he has like a bunker underneath the house, and even when the house detonates his private
His
stuff is still
important
gonna be-
stuff is still there, yeah.
Which I thought was sweet. I thought that was kind of...
All right. A little sentimental, but okay.
Like, why would you save some pictures?
Who cares?
Who gives a fuck?
Pictures of your family. Lame. That's me.
Doesn't he have them on his phone?
No, but it's I don't know.
It was just nice the way it was a detail,
Yeah.
is what I mean. It was a detail that helps sell the whole thing. So,
It sells character.
so
Yeah,
then
he was great.
They whiz to France, then the Eiffel Tower turns into a rocket launcher. The rocket goes to Tomorrowland,
Which is another dimension.
which is another dimension, and then from once they get to Tomorrowland, they figure out she figures out rather, she has this epiphany moment where she's like, well, wait a minute, maybe the world's only going to end because this machine that Clooney built is actually like broadcasting the idea of death and destruction to human beings. And then they figure out that Hugh Laurie actually has programmed it to do that. And he's done that because he is so frustrated by the fact that no matter how many apocalyptic images and shitty things the human race has showed, meaning the evidence for climate change, the bad result of nuclear warfare, whatever it is.
War, death, doom, destruction, politics.
Right, you name it. The more we're shown it, the more, instead of fighting, hopefully, against it, we just submit to it and, in fact, lap it up.
Yeah. And that was actually kind of funny because it feels like they were sort of taking a dig at, the sensibility of post-apocalyptic pop culture. They're like,
not only that, but
you just make movies about it and you embrace it.
But also fearful media.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But he was talking about, like, well, the more we show you the end of the world, the more you embrace it. You write books about it. You write movies about it.
Yeah.
You talk about how great you can't wait to see what it's going to be like, and you dramatize it.
Right.
And it's like, all right. He kind of has a point. Everybody does play video games where you're in post-apocalyptic future, and
Zombie
everybody's trying
films
to
are huge, and Mad Max has just been a huge...
And everybody's like, oh, I want to be in Mad Max and go through a crazy desert world.
See, I don't. When I watch Mad Max, I don't go, I want to be there.
No, nobody wants to be there, but there's something cathartic about it.
Right.
People like the idea. This is why it's appealing.
But when he said that people are resigned to it, I would change that. I would say that what people are nowadays, in honesty, is that they're apathetic and they expect the answer to come from someone else.
Yeah. Which is resigning yourself.
No,
well,
it is.
I guess
but
not resigning yourself to that happening, it's more expecting someone else to deal with it.
Right.
Right.
Whereas the whole idea actually behind climate change, behind recycling, behind...
Although you hear it all the time with politics, where people are like, well, it doesn't matter who I vote for. It'll be the same outcome either way.
Right.
It doesn't matter. Both parties are horrible.
No, but what I'm saying is everyone's sitting around and waiting for science to come up with a big machine that reverses everything, right? That's what they're actually waiting for.
That's what we need.
Rather than...
Not a big machine that reverses everything, but I do think technology is going to be the answer to
No,
problems.
it is, but what I'm saying is we keep getting told to recycle, cut down on this stuff, use renewable energy light bulbs, put in thicker windows, stop relying on oil. Like, we're told to do all this stuff, nobody does it. They wait for science to create a big thing, because they think we can either land on Mars and live there, or we can create a big ecosystem for the world.
They don't
some
think
big pod thing, and we can all... No, but I'm saying that...
Right.
That people... It's not that people resign themselves to it. It's people have abdicated responsibility for it.
Yeah.
Even though the truth of the matter with climate change is that it's everybody's responsibility, from you to me to everyone.
Either that, or they're convinced that their small portion of it won't help.
Right.
Yes.
Which I think would have been a better speech for him to have given.
Yeah. Yes. People are convinced that they can't change anything.
So they don't bother.
Right. which was kind of the message of the film.
No, it was kind of the message of the film, but the point of the message was also that there are people on the planet that, whether they are creative or whether they're engineers or whether they're scientists or whatever it is, all those pursuits are based on hope. Because it's not about...
Although they call it optimism.
Right.
Which I would quibble about.
Because it's not optimism, it's the hope.
Like recently, someone called me a pessimist, and I don't consider myself a pessimist. In fact, I try very hard not to be a pessimist. I try very hard to be a realist, which is, I think, somewhere between, in the middle of optimism and pessimism, is what's possible, what's accomplishable, and what's realistic, and what's doable, you know?
Right.
Whereas the optimist is just blindly always, it's all going to work out.
Right.
Which I think is probably counterproductive.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Right. But anyway, Hugh Laurie gives a big speech.
We're off topic.
There is, I thought, a very sensitively handled, and considering one is a girl robot and one is a very much older man, a very sensitive moment where they
that was well handled. And that was rough ground to walk on.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the idea is that when he was an 11-year-old boy, he found out that she was a robot, and it kind of broke his heart because he was in love with her, and he was always trying to make her laugh or smile or feel.
He basically
emotion.
fell in love with her, but
But then once
found out she was a robot,
she wasn't able to grow older
and felt betrayed.
Yeah.
And
it was very touching because as she saves his life, and as she lies robotically dying.
Well, also she saves his life by changing the future.
Right.
Which was another thing that was very subtle and they didn't point out, but it did happen.
Right.
Because earlier there's a part where they're all on a platform and they see little flashes of themselves, like
because the tachyons are whizzing all around them.
Right, a few seconds in the future.
Echoes.
Right. So
there's a red dwarf.
So they're going up this platform and what's her name? Casey sees herself a couple seconds in the future lose her hat, which is a very important.
She never got that back either.
She didn't, no. But there was a very important hat. Her hat was very important to her because it was her father's. Anyway. But she loses her hat in the wind and she can't catch it. And she sees it happen a few seconds in the future. And then the same thing happens to her. And Hugh Laurie turns around and says, see, you weren't fast enough. You couldn't change the future. And later on, when... Athena sees what's his name? Clooney get shot. She realizes that it's a blip from the future because at that point the tachyons are all whizzing all over the place.
Because the platform's crashed.
Right. And she actually uses that moment to react and change the future, and she jumps in front of the bullet to save his life.
Right.
So I mean, nobody said a thing about this in the movie. This wasn't mentioned at all, but it was very subtle, and I actually liked that point a lot.
Right.
Because it was basically saying what the whole movie was trying to say. Like, okay, the future's played out, but that doesn't mean it can't be changed.
Right.
Like,
well, we can't do all that we can in our power to try.
This machine is predicting the future, but that future isn't set in stone. It could be changed.
But that's what I'm saying. All the tachyons give is an echo of the future.
Right.
Not the future as it is now.
Right.
So as she lays dying, they have a touching moment where she plays a recording that she made back in the 60s of her feelings towards him, and there was some indication that her, the whole like robotic breaking protocol and having emotion.
What is Kiss?
Yes, what is this thing?
It was definitely that moment.
But it was very nicely done.
But it worked, and it wasn't too treacly.
Clooney sold it with a sort of couple of single tears kind of thing. Yep. And I liked the fact
I liked that she didn't get too sappy. Like, she still stayed fairly robotic, which
and
was
I liked
good.
the fact that his old curmudgeon was able to, and even did when they met up, when she pulled up in the truck with the bike, he still acted like his 11-year-old self would have acted, like all stroppy. I liked the fact that the old curmudgeon had this like child still inside him, who had these.
I did like where he had the gun and he pointed it at her, and she's like, "What, are you going to shoot me?" And he's like, "I'm thinking about it." And then there was just a long pause, and everybody's getting ready, and he's still standing there, and she's like, "Come on!" He's like, "I'm still thinking about it."
Yeah.
It was well done.
So then at the end, he uses one of the jetpacks, which I predicted, to fly her up.
Yep.
And this was the only
Of course,
bit
his
that
invention saved the day.
This was the only bit that I thought was a bit ridiculous, weirdly enough, was the fact that when a robot comes to the end of its life, it detonates with quite such force. Like, I thought that...
I actually didn't think about that too much because it was so well established early on.
If her destruction
Although I don't know
sequence
why-
would have blown up an entire building like that, it's very dangerous to be walking around all these robots.
Yeah.
Because what if they accidentally went into their destruction?
Yeah, that's true.
But she brings
But I
down
could see also why they had that installed. Because if they're all traveling to the regular Earth, you can't have a robot somehow die from misfortune on Earth and then just be there for somebody to discover. So it's got to
Right.
self-destruct.
Yes.
It has to have a self-destruct so that people don't find all the pieces and parts.
But it was extraordinarily
Yeah.
destructive.
Yes. I mean, it should be, right? But then again, they had these guns that literally turned things to vapor. So why
Right.
didn't they just have a destruction thing that turned them to vapor?
Yeah.
It was weird.
So...
It falls apart when you think about it too much.
It does. But ultimately, I thought a fun, childish slice of nostalgia and nostalgia-driven sci-fi with a future-impacting message,
Yes.
which was back-end heavy in terms of the pacing.
Yes.
It just
I
needed
could agree with
so less up front.
Yes. And I think its message was in the right place. Again, I still think it was a little sappy and heavy-handed, but
Yeah, but also you've
It's
got to
also
think
for
about it.
kids.
It's not, well, it's for families.
yeah. Which means kids.
But it's equally to. It should be able to
You have to
inspire
write
anybody.
You have to write it that kids can understand it. Is what it boils down to.
Right. But it would equally
Even though you
inspire-
want parents to enjoy it also,
Right.
you have to write it with kids in mind.
Yeah.
So
But I think
I
that-
can understand that, but I did feel like it was heavy-handed, and there were some groan-inducing moments, but it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be.
No.
Especially for someone as cynical as me. Like, I wouldn't...
Well,
I feel like if I could sit and watch this and be like, oh, this is okay.
right.
I don't-
Other people would really enjoy it.
You would think, right?
What I enjoyed about it was, because I believe in the message anyway. It's kind of preaching to the choir in terms of me.
That's true.
But
I don't know that... Yeah.
the other
As we were saying, I don't know that two right-wingers would necessarily feel the same
Republicans would
way
hate this.
about this movie.
They would absolutely hate it.
Yeah.
Except maybe the message of like American ingenuity,
Yeah.
maybe.
Or maybe the message of get government out of ingenuity and just
Yeah.
allow people to be creative.
It does kind of have both
It's got a
those,
little bit of a libertarian
Right.
ideal there.
because there is
Although it
actual-
also says get money out of it, so I don't know that would work with the same
Right.
philosophy.
So the message was all very well, but what I completely dug about it was I really dug how inventive it was. Like when it got inventive,
Yeah.
when it got creative, I really loved it.
Yeah.
Like the Clooney house escape, the Eiffel Tower, like these are my favorite bits of the movie because they're
Yep.
inventive. But I also really dug some of the like 60s and 70s sci-fi cliches, like Hugh Laurie getting off that flying bus or whatever it was in some ludicrous,
Ridiculous.
futuristic Ming the Merciless.
See, and I didn't like those. I
Coat.
thought the one thing that needed work was the costuming. It's very dorky costuming.
But I dug that about it.
No,
it was
I
like a
didn't like
proper 70s heartbreak that he'd be walking around in this ridiculous, like, I saw this in a 70s TV show once costume.
Yeah, it was a little...
No, I dug that about it. I
No.
totally was on board with the whole, like, space 1999
Yeah.
jumpsuits and all that. Like, I really dug all that about it.
It was... alright. We can agree to disagree.
It was
I guess, on that.
it was more TV shows of my youth rather than the Jetsons, which
Yeah,
would have
right.
annoyed me.
I thought it was a little shiny suit, heavy.
They never addressed, the one thing they never addressed was they never addressed that when they landed back in Tomorrowland, instead of being all happy and shiny, it was
It
this
was
sort
mostly destroyed.
of... Yeah, why
Yeah.
was that?
I don't get that either. it's like they'd all given up.
Was it that Hugh Laurie was just running it like a dictator?
But I don't think so. Like, he seemed a bit curmudgeonly, but he wasn't like, I don't know.
He didn't have
He was a
dungeons
strange
or
character.
anything. He
No,
wasn't like putting people to death or something.
He wasn't outright evil.
Well, except that he did have evil robots who went around atomizing people.
Yeah, right. Which was strange. I don't know. It's a very strange... And also, he's like, well, we'll be fine here. Like, oh yeah, the world's getting destroyed in 58 days, but we'll be fine here. And like, so then why is everybody there giving up?
Right.
If they don't care about... Also, there are all the creative and dreamer people are living there.
Well, it's because he's not allowing anyone to sit around in their pants and watch TV. They've got to be constantly creating, and they've all just, like, they've run out.
That's what it boils down to.
Also...
They need Daredevil. They need...
Right.
They need Orange is the New Black.
Yeah. Because creative people have about a 7 to 10 year lifespan of, like, really good creativity, you know what I mean?
And the rest of the time is spent sitting in your pants.
No, but I'm just, like... Very few people. I mean, David Bowie arguably has gone on and continued to be creative.
Who's that?
David Bowie.
David Bowie? Oh, David Bowie. Oh, okay.
Dylan on and off has had his moments.
No, he's mostly off.
Tom Waits has gone on for like 40 years being inventive.
You're naming all musicians.
Well,
that says something about you.
Okay, Terry Gilliam as a filmmaker and animator and artist has been very creative for 40 years.
Sure.
But also the prime of Python's writing ability was between sort of the end of the 60s and the end of the 80s. So they had about 20 years, but after like Fish Called Wanda, their stuff is not as strong.
Right.
I'm just saying that there is a lifespan of creativity.
Right.
Which means you can expect about another 5 years of the After Movie Diner before I completely give up and shoot myself in the face.
I've 5 whole years? Oy.
Oh, wait.
I don't know
I've
if I
run
can
out
deal
of
with it.
albums about Donald Pleasance to write, and then I'll give up. So I think that's probably what's happened to Tomorrowland, is everyone sat around and went, look, we've drained everything of our creativity we possibly could hope for. You know what I mean? We've wrung out the flannel of our creativity, stopped demanding more of us.
And it sounds like they stopped recruiting new people. I think that was part of it.
Right. Well, because he built evil robots rather than cute little children recruiter robots.
Right. All of the recruiter robots are children, apparently.
Kind of creepy.
Which is a little creepy.
Because it would mean you just get a lot of pedophile
But you get what they're
artists.
Doing. I mean,
they're all Pete Townsend who show up.
As a cynic, you can also watch this movie and be like, oh, look, they're building a ride for Disney World. Like, oh, look, he gets into a little car, and then it goes through a thing, and it goes down a little hatch, down a water slide hatch into a room where he gets transported to the future, and then he gets out in Tomorrowland. It's like, wow, this is like tailor-made to be a ride at Disneyland, basically. They're going to revamp the Tomorrowland ride at Disneyland and make it all...
Is it a ride at Disneyland?
It's an area. I don't know that it's a ride.
Oh, so it's based on something that already existed in Disney?
Tomorrowland is a Disney park theme park.
I didn't realize.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they're definitely... I mean, it's a property that they have that they're trying to develop, obviously, so you can cynically look at it that way.
Right.
But it works, it still works as a movie.
But I also like the fact
I'm fine with that. I don't care if you're doing a...
Well, also, you look at when Disney started out, there was
a whole... It's like Pirates of the Caribbean.
Right.
Like, it was a ride that existed that they tried to make a movie for. It turned out the first movie they made was actually pretty good.
Right.
The others are not so much, but...
Right. But the other thing is that, you look... Also, it works because if you're going to start the story at the World Fair, and let's say It's a Small World was at the World Fair, the spirit of whatever Disney, the original Walt Disney, whatever he put into the idea of we should embrace the whole world and lives on in this as a theme park.
It was a very Disney.
But I don't mind
idea
that.
Of things.
It's like I found you and I were talking.
You can also
someone else was telling me that. I think it was Abby was telling me, and you may have been there actually, but that like Sesame Street and the Jim Henson Workshop have like things all over the world. Like there's different Sesame Streets in different parts of the world. Like there's an African Sesame Street and there's one in the...
I've watched one of them because I used to live in Holland.
Right.
And they had a different Sesame Street with different characters.
Right. But what I mean is that's a very
there was
kind
some of the characters were crossed over.
Right.
But a bunch of them were characters that I'd never heard of.
But that idea that an educational but also fun message can unite the world rather than, you know what I mean? That's part of that 50s, 60s ideal that Henson came out of, and that Disney came out of, and da-da-da-da-da. So I didn't mind it being tied into that.
It's kind of a sunny, optimistic, rosy view.
It's also a realistic
one.
Should. Like Henson set up an
to
educational.
An extent. I mean, I do kind of feel like this movie glosses over the real problems and technological limitations. Like it just kind of says, well, if you're creative, you'll invent an amazing machine that fixes everything.
No, but but that's not what it says. I don't think that's I don't think that's what it says. So I think what it says is that at the moment, people turn on Fox News or they turn on the CNN or they turn on whatever. They see news from around the world 24/7, most of which is awful. It's riots and it's shootings and it's protests and it's bombs and it's war and it's death and it's all those things.
Right.
And we focus on that, right? And we get all tied up in knots. I mean, we're about to see it with the election again. We get tied up all in knots of like, well, how do we tackle this problem? And how do we tackle that problem? And how do we tackle this problem? And instead of...
And all we see is problems.
Sometimes those problems... Right, all we see is problems. Sometimes there is no direct answer to how do we tackle these problems. Normally what it comes down to is that society itself needs more education, needs less ignorance, needs more positivity. Like there's certain things that society in general needs. It needs, more socialism, more welfare, whatever it is, but it needs a strong grounding for humanity in which we are educated, in which we are made to feel like anything is possible, and in which we have the food, the clothes, and the roof over our head from which to do it. And that's very simplistic, but what I mean is, if we focused on, like Neil deGrasse Tyson says, if we focused on what is it we can build, where is it we can go, what is it we can do, if we all focused on that rather than, oh shit, this is blowing up and those people are dying and this disease is going to kill us and blah, 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 blah. It's not a question of... It's like what people say to me. They say to me constantly, like, oh, you shouldn't be so down on yourself, right? And the reason why they say that is because if you think slightly more positively about yourself, and I don't mean to an egotistical sense,
right?
But if you think slightly more positively about yourself, then like the world around you can become just a slightly nicer place, and you can actually kind of put more positivity and creativity out there in a small way, which then kind of spreads. It's the whole metaphor that she has with the two wolves, right? And there's one wolf that's despair and one wolf that's hope.
Yeah.
And he says, which wolf survives? The one you feed. While that is a very simplistic thing,
yes,
it is also true.
Yes.
There are some people on the planet, though, that we've talked about before.
It's also a false dichotomy.
No, true, but
it's saying you can either have profound, over-the-top hope and optimism for everything, or you can have total despair. Whereas I feel like the's something in the middle, which is where you can look realistically at the world and say what's possible, and what should we focus on,
right?
And what's...
Well, we've talked about before, people who go around and are relentlessly happy even in the face of actual personal upset, and they deny their emotions and blah, blah, blah. We've talked about these people before.
Yep.
Those kind of deluded people, I don't want to be that, right?
Right, I agree.
But you can also be deluded the other way, because despair and depression will also take you down a road where you're like, well, there is no hope, and there is nothing I can do, and there is nothing I can change, and there is nothing wrong, so why do I bother?
I mean, in many cases, that's a medical problem more than an attitude problem.
I'm just using...
But yes, I get what you're saying.
And the thing in the middle is, you should allow things to happen, things to enter your brain, things to be around you.
Right.
But you should also feel the emotions you have.
Right. And you don't have to negate
upset or sadness, but you shouldn't negate possibilities. Right.
Assuming that they're realistic possibilities.
Right. And I don't think
that you should.
I don't think
have
I think you saw them.
hopes
I think you saw the movie as relentlessly optimistic and hopeful, and I don't think it is. I think all the movie says is...
I don't know about relentless, because I was able to watch it. If it was truly relentless, I would have barfed halfway through it, because
I think all the movie
that
says
kind of thing
is that
really
if you,
turns me off. But
if you have
I
some
do
kind of
think
positive potential,
yes.
just kind of go with that.
And it wasn't awful. I'm not saying...
Right.
I'm just saying it felt a little heavy-handed to me, more at the beginning than later on.
Right.
Because later on, it actually worked with the plot of what was happening. In the beginning, it was very... But, I mean, her character had to be that, because that's one of the reasons she got selected. So, I mean, yeah. I don't know. I get what they were doing.
Right.
I agree in the abstract with what they're doing. I feel like
I don't think
it's
it
a
presents
little
any
glossed
answers.
over.
I think it just says, isn't this a better way to be than the alternative?
Right.
I think that's all it's saying. Isn't it better to be planting trees, putting up wind farms, creating paintings, fixing scientific problems? Is that not a nicer, happier, better way to be than focused on who's going to kill us next, what disaster's
I do like
coming?
that the movie is pro-creativity, it's solution-centered, it's pro-technology,
Right.
which I'm totally with.
Right.
Technology is the way to go. Technology is going to save the world.
But the only reason we get technology is because of people like this. That's what it's saying.
To an extent, yes.
Yeah, well, I mean...
I think it also over-romanticizes technology as like one incredible genius person who just invents a rocket thing in his shed at the age of 11. I don't think it's really that.
Isn't that the Steve Jobs story, though, when he creates the Apple computer and all that?
Steve Jobs made computers with a whole team of people. He had a bunch of people who helped him.
I don't
think... Like, he wasn't even a technological genius. Like, he was a marketing genius. He was a business genius. That's what his thing was.
Okay, you're
and
talking
was
more
a
about
design...
individual versus teams. I'm happy to accept teams.
I'm saying...
not saying...
I'm saying it's less about genius and more about, regular people.
Trial and error.
Regular people create things all the time.
Right.
Large groups of people who are engineers come up with solutions to problems. They're not, extraordinary, unusual geniuses. I don't
think the movie said that either.
It does say that. It says you're special. You. And go find the other small select group of special people out there who will save us, as opposed to the rest of humanity. I mean, it basically says find the optimists in the world who have a positive outlook.
I guess so.
But I'm nitpicking. Overall, it's good. I just feel like that
and when I said the Steve
mindset
Jobs story,
that
I didn't
only
mean...
a special person can.
Right, but I wasn't
anything.
talking about individuals. I understand he created stuff with a whole bunch of people. I'm just saying...
individual people had a big impact on that.
But what I'm saying is, aren't things like the
like
phone
somebody
we're recording this on,
like...
doesn't it start with two guys in a garage somewhere, or...
Sure.
Right? Doesn't the Beatles start with two guys in their front room?
And then they end up building a large company and hiring a team of... hundreds of designers who came together to make this thing we're recording.
I'm not debating that or arguing the point. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying I think the movie is just saying everything starts from that place. It's not... I don't think it's saying that... I mean, yes, in this futuristic world, they're saying... only
individuals have ideas.
Right.
And I can agree with that. Right. Although I felt the movie was overly centered on the tinkerer, the guy in his garage who builds some amazing doohickey.
Right.
That does something extraordinary. But
agreed.
But no, again, I'm nitpicking. Okay. Picking nits.
Nice. Well, with that, sir,
yes,
that has been 1 hour and 15 minutes of absolute joy that I've spent with you,
This is the most positive hour and 15 minutes that you and I have ever spent in a room in our lives.
Well, look at what the movie has inspired.
Isn't that amazing?
That is fantastic.
I mean, I can't think of a better selling point for this film.
Yeah.
If it can make us see something positive in it.
Yeah.
That's pretty damned impressive.
Except that I think you missed the fact that I kind of wander around thinking positive things anyway.
This is incredibly hilariously funny after the argument we had on Facebook today.
But I don't think we had an
Where I
argument on
basically
Facebook.
called you
We
a very
had-
negative person.
Right, which
And then
that
you said,
upset me.
"No, I'm not,"
That upset
which
me.
in itself is a negative response.
No, but I said that
know.
as a joke.
I know, I'm kidding.
I said I hate that you said that because you said I hate everything.
I know.
I said that as a joke. But I actually walk around and think that there's hope for humanity.
And
I
I'm
actually feel
consistently called an extremely negative person.
that. Right. No, people think I'm negative, but actually
Yeah.
I have quite a lot of hope for humanity, otherwise I wouldn't get up every morning.
Oh, all right. I don't have that much hope for you.
I don't have much hope for me,
No.
but that's a whole other thing entirely.
No. Stop.
No, I'm that's the serious bit. That's the bit where I'm like, I don't have much hope for me. but
Look
for
at you. You're
humanity.
changing the world right now.
What with this podcast?
You're bringing them the glorious nasally voice of Marc McDonald. All right.
Yes, excellent.
There it goes. There's the downturn,
Sir.
everybody. Now we can go home depressed.
Thank you very much, sir, for being on the show again.
Thank you for having me.
No, I wanted you to be on the show again.
Thank you for
years.
strong-arming me into it at the last minute
I
after
didn't.
stepping
I
out
came
of it.
out of the bathroom and I said, "Would you feel like doing this?" And you were like, "Sure, okay."
Yep.
And we went and got milkshakes.
Yep. I did it for the milkshakes.
Yeah, it's all good. All right, man. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Well, George Clooney, you invented the jetpack. You get a pat on the back. Oh, George Clooney. I'm singing George Clooney, you invented a machine that can see the future and our entire destruction. That wasn't really as good as the jetpack. Oh, George Clooney. I'm singing George Clooney, have your house rigged in case of attack. You've really covered every base and thought of everything. But let me ask you, wasn't it a bit like living in a death trap? Well, what if you got drunk one night, accidentally pulled the wrong lever? Did you ever think of that? Did you ever think of that? Oh, George Clooney. George Clooney, you're in love with a little robot girl, George Clooney. Oh, George Clooney. Oh, she'll never love you back. She's a little robot girl and not part of her programming. Not part of her programming. Oh, and she'll never age, and you really age. She'll never age. She's still a little girl robot. So you probably shouldn't be in love with a man that's a little creepy. Ah, George Clooney. Even if it's handled sensitively, you maybe shouldn't still be in love with a little girl robot, little girl robot, little girl robot, little girl robot, singing George Clooney, George Clooney.